After the study about the population and the trends of Arctic animals, let us look at some other parameters. The first one is the vegetation. So here is the chart which talks about the coverage, because the green color, whatever we see, these programs in the Norway are being monitored with poor spatial coverage, but there is enough funding to study that. And there is a blue color which says that monitoring with the good spatial coverage across ecoregions and considerable funding is also available, especially in the case of Iceland. All plant species can be studied in Sweden also and in the United States. These three regions, there is enough funding to study about the many of the Arctic species. And when we come to the rare species, Sweden and Finland has the yellow color. So what does this yellow color mean? This is monitoring with the good spatial coverage across ecoregion but sporadic funding. That means there may be some projects which are funded maybe for some duration but not continuously. So again we have the pink color. So here the monitoring with poor spatial coverage, sporadic funding. So that means it is neither continuous nor funding is there. So these are all the pink one. So in other words, what we can say is in the United States, Canada, the non-native species and the food species are not studied completely. And when we talk about the red one means no monitoring or short-term projects only. So that means the food species in most of the regions like Norway, Iceland, Greenland and Sweden, they don't monitor the food species that are present in the Arctic region. So how do they study that? They use regional and global remote sensing products with the higher spatial and temporal resolution. Based on that, they study how much vegetation is present and how much change is happening. We had earlier seen about the Arctic greening and Arctic browning. So all those things are studied and they are used to understand how it affects the Arctic biodiversity. Then the next one is arthropods. So if you look at arthropod, none of the countries are actually studying anything related to all these species. The reason is they have to work with indigenous knowledge holders, local knowledge holders and our citizens' science to identify regionally important species to monitor and key location for long-term monitoring activities. Since arthropods are very small, people don't pay too much attention in studying that. In the case of birds, many of the things are having the pink color. So what does that pink color means? Monitoring with poor spatial coverage, sporadic funding. I mean, partial monitoring is there, but not completely all the birds are being monitored in the Arctic region. In fact, Norway does some studies. Basically, they give some good spatial coverage and there is funding is the only problem. It is not continuous. It is just a sporadic funding. But only in the case of Iceland, there is all the things are happening in the right way. That means monitoring with good spatial coverage across ecoregions and continuous funding is also there. The next one is mammals. So for large herbivore, small herbivore and medium-sized predators, the focal ecosystem components are they have to agree on priorities and harmonize data collections across sites and programs, share and standardize protocol to include abundance, demographic, spatial structure, health, phenology and for harvested species, harvest rate. So these are all the things that they have to use in the study. These are called the focal ecosystem components. Based on that, they study what is the type of mammal present and we have earlier seen case of polar bear, beluga whale, walrus and other species we have seen. So that is what is given here in this one. So they monitor the abiotic factors and the drivers of change across greater spatial distribution to assess the cumulative impact of climate and other anthropogenic change on population across the region. So by knowing this, people also can help the indigenous communities in their hunting of Arctic animals. So here are the various biodiversity parameters and the focal ecosystem components. Some of the things are studied in the sea ice, which includes species richness, abundance, biomass, community composition, biogeography, boundary shifts. All these things are studied for the sea ice. And in the case of marine mammals, the abundance is being studied, the health conditions, diet, and genetics, unusual observations, harvest statistics, because many of the marine mammals are being hunted by the indigenous people. So harvest statistics is also very important to see what is the change in the population of these species. Habitat use and population dynamics are also being studied for marine mammals. Seabirds, people study about the harvest statistics, colony size, survivorship, and phenology. And reproductive success also they monitor for the seabirds. Planktons mainly are present in sea, so they are studied like sea ice. Fishes are also in the marine ecosystem, so people study about this mainly similar to the sea ice. But additionally, the health conditions, diet, genetics, unusual events and observations, and harvest statistics are very important, because fish is a very important food for many of the people. Not only for the people living in the Arctic region, many of the Arctic species are also being exported to various countries. So let us look at the climate change implications for the animals. The first one is loss of ice affects polar bears, seals and walrus, which leads to change of feeding behavior and areas, change habits for reproduction and resting, and often they have to travel further, with consequent reduction in population, productivity and size. So loss of ice affects polar bears, seals and walrus. Similarly, increased frequency of winter rain and melting temperature create ice cover on the ground or in the snowpack, making it difficult for the caribou or reindeer or musk oxen to reach food and sometimes causing die-off. Similarly, warming temperatures and driving greater growth and spread of primary shrubs, but also trees, transforming the low Arctic tundra to subarctic conditions, which resultant influx of species, mainly moose, Eurasian elk, American beaver and snowshoe hare, that can use this new habitat. So this is a good thing that is happening for these kind of species. They can actually forage on more area. Later onset of snow in autumn and earlier spring melt shorten the duration and quality of the snow cover, that is essential for lemming winter production, because lemming is the main food for many of the foodweb species in the Arctic region. So these are implicated in reduced amplitude and longer period of lemming cycles, and therefore reduce availability of lemming prey for numerous predators. So this is the negative effect. Other effects include modification in the onset, duration and amount of plant growth, variation in distribution of ice associated marine productivity, increased frequency of boreal and tundra wildfires, alterations in the relative abundance of particular plant groups in tundra habitats, shift in insect distribution and abundance, diverse distributions of parasite and pest together with more extreme weather events and storms. These are likely to have direct or indirect effect on the distribution and carrying capacity, productivity and ultimately population size of various mammal. Basically the migratory tundra caribou and wolves are affected heavily. And what are the effect of human activities on the Arctic mammals? Harvesting of Arctic mammal is a major cause for decline in the population of whales and reindeer. Infrastructure development at sea and on land, hydrocarbon and mineral evaporation. This is what we have seen in the biodiversity stressors. So infrastructure development is one of the important biodiversity stressor. So the infrastructure development at sea and on land, new shipping routes, new roads and increased tourism affect Arctic wild animals. So these are all the various stressors which affect the biodiversity in Arctic region. These bring risk of direct mortality. That means if there is an oil spill or ship collision that kills many Arctic mammals, or displacement from crucial habitat, that is calving, pupping and feeding areas, or disturbance like aircraft, road or ship noise interfering with the whale feeding or caribou suckling, and of increased human hunting. So these are all the activities created by humans on the population of Arctic. This affects negatively. And what about the indigenous knowledge on the Arctic ecosystem? The indigenous knowledge indicates increasing variability in year-to-year berry abundance. So that's what people had observed. Most Arctic goose population that stage or winter in North America and Western Europe have increased. But many goose population that breed in the Russian Arctic and stage or winter in Central Eastern Asia are declining. So, the change of climate has some positive and some negative effect. Some caribou reindeer population of importance to indigenous communities have dramatically declined, with some experiencing changes in distribution range and fragmentation. For example, the Bathurst population declined by 98% between 1986 and 2015, with post-calving and autumn range declines and a change in winter habitat from the boreal forest to the tundra, which reduced spring migration distance by 50%. So these are all the knowledge identified by the indigenous people.